He built an empire and called her trash, until the woman he discarded rose from the ruins, carrying his child and escorted by a billionaire who saw her worth. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The penthouse was silent, save for the distant hum of city traffic below and the rhythmic tick of an antique wall clock. Jonathan Stone's latest acquisition from a Parisian estate auction. Scarlett sat on the edge of the leather chaise lounge, one hand resting on her swollen belly, the other clutching a half-folded envelope she hadn't opened yet. Her feet ached. Her back screamed. Her heart, however, was the heaviest thing in the room. She glanced at the entrance just as the front door swung open with a dramatic push, followed by the echo of designer shoes clicking against imported marble flooring. Jonathan entered like a man stepping onto a stage, sharp-tailored suit, loosened tie, and the unmistakable scent of champagne and ego. He carried a phone in one hand, barely sparing her a glance. His other hand gestured animatedly as he spoke. "Yeah, Forbes wants a quote. Tell them I'll give them 10 minutes tomorrow, Max," he said into the phone, grinning as though the world existed purely for his satisfaction. It's not every day a guy closes a 9-figure deal before lunch. He tossed the phone onto the credenza, peeled off his jacket, and finally turned toward her. Scarlett smiled faintly, hopeful despite herself. "I saw the news. Congratulations, Jonathan." He blinked. For a moment, he looked at her as if trying to remember what part she played in his life. Then he scoffed, walked to the kitchen, and pulled open the wine cooler. "Spare me the pageant smiles, Scarlett. We both know you had nothing to do with it." Her breath hitched. She straightened slowly, trying to shift the weight of her pregnancy, both physical and emotional. "I was just trying to be kind." "Kind," he repeated, now pouring himself a glass of Bordeaux. He took a long sip, his gaze settling on her, as if she were something unpleasant he'd stepped in. "You were the anchor, the dead weight I had to drag through law school, the one who begged me to stay when I had offers in New York and Singapore. And look at you now, barefoot, bloated, and waiting for me to throw you a bone like a dog." The words landed like slaps, each syllable sharp, calculated, unforgiving. Scarlett felt the familiar sting behind her eyes, but she refused to cry. Not in front of him. Not again. She rose carefully to her feet, hands instinctively moving to support her belly. "You used to love me," she said softly. "We used to talk about building something together. A life. A family." Jonathan laughed, cold and hollow. "I outgrew you, Scarlett. That's what you can't seem to understand. I built something. You just existed. Decorating our house and popping prenatal vitamins isn't contribution, it's charity." She blinked, stunned. "I gave up everything to support you." "No one asked you to," he snapped, now moving toward the hallway. "You did it because you didn't have anything else to offer." The silence that followed was dense, filled with every unsaid insult and buried resentment. He paused in the doorway of their once shared bedroom and looked back at her with a sneer. "You're not a wife anymore. You're a liability. Trash that came in a pretty box. I don't need you now." Scarlett didn't speak. She couldn't. She could barely breathe. Jonathan disappeared into the bedroom, returning moments later with a duffel bag and a Rolex watch he tossed into it like loose change. "I'll be staying at the Langham. Don't call. Don't show up. Don't embarrass yourself." And then he left. Just like that. The door clicked shut behind him, and the penthouse fell into an eerie stillness. Scarlett stood in the center of it, trembling, one hand clinging to the back of a chair for balance. The weight of her child pressed against her spine, reminding her she wasn't alone. She was devastated, humiliated, but something inside her stirred, something buried beneath years of compromise and silence. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was the first breath of clarity. The city wore a gray coat of drizzle that afternoon. The sky had forgotten how to be blue, and the sidewalks shimmered with cold puddles reflecting the blur of people too busy to look up. Scarlet pulled her coat tighter around her, an old wool piece that no longer buttoned over her growing belly, and kept walking. She could have turned around. She had considered it more than once. But something stubborn in her kept her moving toward the art exhibition on the Upper East Side. It wasn't the kind of place she belonged anymore. Not without Jonathan. Not with swollen ankles and second-hand boots. Yet when her old college friend Ella had sent her a last-minute invite with a gentle, "You need to get out," she couldn't say no. So here she was alone, tired, unsure of herself, but here. The gallery was an oasis of light and stillness. Abstract paintings and sculptures filled the minimalist space, all stark whites and bold strokes of color. The air smelled faintly of citrus and varnish. Soft jazz played from somewhere overhead, a sharp contrast to the chaos inside her. She wandered quietly, trying not to draw attention. Her hands rested gently on her stomach, almost as if shielding her child from judgment. Elegant guests sipped champagne, spoke in hushed tones about brushwork and symbolism. Scarlet moved between them like a ghost, half present, half broken. It was a canvas of a woman standing at the edge of a storm that caught her eye. Painted in muted grays and pale yellows, the figure stood alone, hair wild in the wind, her back straight. There was something defiant about her posture. Something familiar. "You see the resolve too, don't you?" The voice was low, steady, and masculine, close enough to startle her. Scarlet turned and found herself facing a man who didn't look like he belonged either. Not in a way that suggested poverty, but in a way that suggested power, had grown tired of performing. He wore a tailored navy coat, the collar turned slightly up, and he held his glass like he hadn't taken a sip in hours. His eyes, cool steel gray but kind, studied her without intruding. "I'm sorry," she said, unsure. "The painting," he replied, gesturing to the canvas. "Everyone else sees fear. I see resolve. Like she's about to walk into the storm, not away from it." Scarlet glanced back at the painting. Her lips parted, but the words got tangled somewhere in her throat. She felt suddenly seen in a way she hadn't in months. I think you're right," she murmured. He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I'm Ethan, by the way. Ethan Blackwell." Her breath caught for a moment. She recognized the name. Blackwell Holdings. One of the few billionaires in the city whose money didn't come with scandal, or at least not the kind that leaked. "I'm Scarlet," she said softly. "Stone." Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly, but didn't press. "Pleasure to meet you, Scarlet Stone." There was a beat of silence. "You're not here for the art, are you?" he asked gently. She hesitated. Her instinct was to lie. Say she was just browsing. But she was tired of pretending. "No," she said, surprising herself. "I needed to be anywhere else. Even if it meant standing in a room full of strangers with nothing to offer but borrowed courage." Ethan nodded slowly, then stepped slightly closer. Not too close, not imposing. "That kind of courage is rarer than you think." Scarlet looked down, suddenly self-conscious. "I'm sorry. I'm pregnant, overwhelmed, and clearly oversharing." "I don't mind," he said. "In fact, I'd like to listen." She looked up at him, confused. "I'm not trying to fix you," he added. "But something tells me you've been silenced too long. And that bothers me." Something in his voice was solid. Grounded. Not pitying, not performative. Just steady. So she told him. Not everything. But enough. She told him about Jonathan. About the betrayal. The abandonment. The words she still heard every night like broken records. She didn't cry. Not once. But her hands trembled. Ethan listened, not interrupting. His gaze never wavered. When she finished, she felt lighter. Not healed, but no longer hollow. "I don't know what I'm going to do," she admitted. "I'm scared." He nodded. "Good. Fear keeps us human. But what you do next, that's where strength is forged." Scarlet gave him a small, almost shy smile. "You're not what I expected." "Neither are you," Ethan said. Then, after a pause, "If you want out, Scarlet, really out, I can help." She blinked. "Why?" "Because I don't believe people like Jonathan should win. And I think you deserve more than survival. You deserve to build." Scarlett stared at him, unsure if she should trust what he was offering. But for the first time in months, she felt a seed of possibility stirring in her chest. And that night, under the muted lights of an art gallery in the middle of the city, a door quietly opened in her life. One that Jonathan could no longer control. The first call came the next morning. Scarlett sat at her small kitchen table in the two-bedroom apartment she had moved into after leaving the penthouse. Nothing like the glass-walled luxury she'd once known, but it was hers. A chipped mug of tea sat untouched in front of her. The city moved outside the fogged window, uncaring and loud. Inside, the silence was dense. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She hesitated, thumb hovering. Then answered. Scarlett Stone, a woman's voice asked, crisp and professional. Yes. My name is Maria Chung. I'm with Blackwell Legal Associates. Mr. Ethan Blackwell asked me to reach out. He said you're ready. Scarlett froze. Ready. The word echoed like a challenge. Yes. I think I am. Good. We'll begin preparing the initial filings for divorce. You don't need to worry about any of the financial logistics. Mr. Blackwell has authorized full support. We'll send a courier with documents this afternoon. He also requested that we arrange a private therapist and an OB/GYN of your choosing. Scarlett swallowed hard. That's very generous. Maria paused. He doesn't consider it charity. He considers it overdue justice. Scarlett ended the call with a strange cocktail of emotions swirling inside her. Gratitude, uncertainty, and the faintest pulse of empowerment. She wasn't a victim in a cage anymore. She was moving. She was choosing. 3 weeks passed in a blur of paperwork and firestorms. Jonathan didn't take it well. He didn't even pretend to be surprised when the divorce papers arrived at his firm. He laughed, arrogant and amused, until his legal team informed him that Scarlett wasn't just filing. She had legal muscle behind her. Powerful legal muscle. He had expected tears, begging, one final chance to watch her unravel. Instead, he found clean signatures and an air of detachment he couldn't understand. You really want to do this? He asked over a strained phone call one evening, his voice tight with disbelief. Scarlett's tone was calm. You already did. You'll walk away with nothing. No, she said, almost gently. I'm walking away with everything you tried to destroy and couldn't. He hung up on her. The next day, news broke on several blogs that Jonathan Stone was involved in a particularly nasty divorce. Speculation swirled. His image, a family man, a driven visionary, began to tarnish. A few board members pulled private meetings. Scarlett didn't watch the headlines. She stayed focused on her own reconstruction. Ethan kept his word, quietly and without fanfare. He never hovered. Never made her feel indebted. He introduced her to his advisors, asked her what she truly wanted, not just for herself, but for her child. For her life. I want to open a center, she confessed one evening over coffee in his minimalist office. For women like me, who get abandoned, humiliated, left with nothing while the world keeps praising their husbands. Ethan didn't flinch. He simply nodded. Good, he said. We'll start with a feasibility study. Then a business plan. I'll put up the seed capital. You run it. Make it real. Scarlett stared at him. Why are you doing this? Ethan leaned forward, eyes steady. Because people like Jonathan think power is cruelty. But real power is the ability to rebuild. And that's what I see in you. The divorce finalized quietly. Scarlett didn't attend court. She didn't need to. Maria handled everything. Jonathan fought, of course. Not because he wanted her back, but because he hated losing. But every move he made was countered. Every petty tactic disarmed. He signed the final documents at 11:43 a.m. on a Monday. Alone. Furious. And Scarlett, sitting by the window of her new office space above a bakery in Soho, watched the sunrise with her hands resting over her child and a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips. For the first time in years, she felt free. Not lost. Not small. Free. The old Scarlett would have hesitated before stepping into a boardroom. She would have checked the mirror twice, second-guessed her thoughts, and waited for someone else to lead the way. But that Scarlett was gone. Now she adjusted the strap on her heels, ran a hand over her baby bump in silent reassurance, and pushed open the glass doors of the downtown co-working space like she belonged there. Because she did. The space Ethan secured for her wasn't lavish, but it buzzed with potential. Exposed brick walls, tall windows that let in swaths of afternoon sun, and a long oak table where her small team was already setting up laptops, mood boards, and coffee. Scarlett had personally interviewed every woman on her team. Most of them mothers, some survivors of similar pain, all of them dreamers. The project was no longer just an idea. It had a name, Scarlett Haven. A haven for women. For mothers. For anyone clawing their way out of the wreckage of a relationship, a reputation, or a past someone else tried to bury them under. Ethan came by occasionally, always respectful, always brief. He never spoke to her in a way that made her feel helped. He asked questions, listened to her ideas, and when she doubted herself, reminded her what she'd already survived. One evening, as the team packed up and left, Ethan lingered. "Did I ever thank you?" she asked quietly, standing at the window with the city lights flickering below. He raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For seeing me when I felt invisible." "You didn't need me to see you," he said. "You just needed a mirror that wasn't cracked." Scarlett looked at him, touched in a place too deep to name. "Still, thank you." Ethan nodded, then smiled. "Now thank yourself. You're the one who's doing the building." Weeks became months. Scarlett took business courses online, late at night with swollen ankles propped on pillows. She met with city health officials, investors Ethan introduced her to, and medical professionals who would become the backbone of the center's programs. There were days she wanted to collapse. Days she missed the ease of being a kept woman, of letting someone else decide everything. But then she'd remember the penthouse silence, the cruelty in Jonathan's voice, the way she had once folded herself into a smaller version to fit into someone else's success. Not anymore. The moment that changed everything came in the form of a speech. A last-minute invitation arrived, a panel on maternal health equity and entrepreneurial resilience. A speaker had dropped out. Would Scarlett Stone, founder of Scarlett Haven, be willing to take their place? Her hands shook as she read it. She almost said no. Then she thought about the women who'd been discarded, who were sitting at home right now, broken, unseen, unheard. She stood before a room of CEOs, policymakers, and medical leaders 2 weeks later. 8 months pregnant, radiant in a tailored navy dress, her voice steady and sure. "I used to believe strength meant endurance," she began. "Staying quiet, smiling through the pain. But I've learned that real strength is choosing yourself after someone else decides you're no longer worth choosing." There was silence. Then applause. Afterward, reporters asked questions. Cameras flashed. People Googled her name. Not because she was Jonathan's ex, but because she had something to say. She wasn't a forgotten wife. She wasn't a discarded burden. She wasn't a symbol of someone else's fall. She was Scarlett. Again. And for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she was living. The invitation arrived on ivory cardstock, sealed in gold wax and scripted in calligraphy. The Bright Futures Annual Gala, an event where wealth paraded itself and reputations were stitched together with applause and champagne. Scarlett stared at the invitation in her hand, her fingers brushing over her name. It was the same event Jonathan had once called the throne room of the city's elite. The same event where he had planned to flaunt Cassandra, the mistress he had replaced her with. The same event he had once told her she'd never be welcome at again. How poetic, she thought, as she set the invitation down and looked over at the man sitting across the table. Ethan Blackwell. Composed as ever, dark suit jacket tossed over his chair, sleeves rolled up, a pen in one hand and a spreadsheet in the other. "Do I go?" she asked quietly. He looked up. "Only if you want to." "I don't want to go to be seen," she said. "I want to go to be remembered." Ethan smiled, not with amusement, but with quiet pride. "Then I'll be honored to escort you." The night of the gala was a masterpiece of elegance. The Crystal Renaissance Hotel glowed like a jewel against the night sky. Valets in white gloves, orchestras behind velvet curtains, a red carpet unfurled beneath the city's elite. Inside, guests buzzed like bees in a chandelier-lit hive. Champagne flutes clinked, laughter echoed, and cameras swept across the ballroom. Jonathan stood at the center of it all. Dressed in a midnight blue tuxedo, Cassandra on his arm in a plunging silver gown, he looked every bit the billionaire power player. His smile was smooth, his laughter sharp. "This year's keynote speaker will be me," he joked to a group of investors, sipping from a crystal glass. Why let humility get in the way of truth? The crowd chuckled. But then everything stopped. The doors opened. Heads turned. Conversations trailed off like broken strings of music. She entered. Scarlett, 8 months pregnant, wrapped in a flowing black satin gown with a silver neckline that glimmered like starlight. Her hair was swept up, her posture regal, her gaze serene. On her arm was Ethan Blackwell, whose mere presence rearranged the energy in the room. Gasps. Whispers. Eyes widened, recognizing not only Ethan, but the woman beside him. The woman who had once been cast out like a forgotten relic. But she wasn't forgotten now. Every head turned. Cameras found her. Phones lifted discreetly. Scarlett walked slowly, each step deliberate. Not flaunting. Not performing. Claiming. Jonathan's glass froze halfway to his lips. His smile collapsed. Cassandra shifted uneasily beside him, tugging at her dress as murmurs swept the room like wildfire. "Is that? Wait, she's with Blackwell? She looks incredible." Jonathan finally moved, storming across the room, face flushed. "What the hell is this?" he hissed when he reached them. Scarlett turned to him, calm. "It's called a return." Ethan said nothing. He didn't need to. Jonathan's eyes flicked to Ethan, then back to Scarlett. "You don't belong here." She leaned in slightly. "You said that last time. But here I am. And this time, I didn't come alone." Her words were soft, deadly, and final. Jonathan clenched his jaw, his composure cracking like thin ice. The cameras nearby caught everything. When Scarlett and Ethan walked away, the crowd parted. Respectfully. Awed. Cassandra followed him back to their table in silence, her grip on his arm looser than before. By the end of the night, investors who had once fawned over Jonathan were whispering behind his back. The board chairman of his company politely excused himself mid-conversation and later handed his business card to Ethan. Cassandra said nothing the entire ride home. The next morning, she left without saying goodbye. Scarlett didn't need to gloat. She didn't need revenge. The gala had done that for her. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand anything. She simply arrived. In her truth. In her strength. In her rebirth. And the world took notice. The morning after the gala, the media was merciless. Billionaire Jonathan Stone snubbed by pregnant ex-wife and CEO Ethan Blackwell in shocking gala appearance. Power shift. Scarlett Stone's triumphant return turns heads at Bright Futures Gala. From mistress to mess, Jonathan's PR nightmare begins. Jonathan sat alone at the head of a long mahogany conference table in his company's 40th floor boardroom, the headlines glowing back at him from the oversized screen on the wall. His assistants shuffled around nervously. His publicist, a woman who had long stopped pretending to like him, read the statements with clipped efficiency. "They're calling it poetic justice," she said flatly. "Some are speculating about insider investor losses. Scarlett's partnership with Blackwell is trending. We have 4 sponsorships pulling out of the next quarter's campaign. And Cassandra," Jonathan stiffened, "has made a statement. To Vanity Street. It's being picked up everywhere." He didn't ask what the statement was. He didn't need to. He'd seen the look in Cassandra's eyes the night before. The one that said you've lost more than just control. You've lost relevance. His jaw locked as the door opened, and one of his most prominent board members entered, eyes steely. "We need to talk." Meanwhile, Scarlett sat at a sunlit cafe across town with a notebook open and a pen poised between her fingers. She wasn't reading the news. She didn't need to. The real victories weren't written in headlines. They were in the emails pouring into her Scarlet Haven inbox from women around the country. Women who were thanking her. Women who were asking how to start over. Women who had found hope just by seeing her stand tall in that ballroom. She had become something more than a symbol. She had become proof. Proof that you could be discarded and still rebuild. That you could be called trash and still become treasure. That you could lose everything and find yourself in the rubble. Across the table, Ethan stirred his espresso. "You know what they'll say next," he murmured. She looked up. "That you're only here because I funded you." She smiled faintly. "Then let them come see what I've built." Ethan leaned back in his chair, impressed, not for the first time. "You're not afraid anymore, are you?" Scarlett shook her head slowly. "I was never afraid of failing. I was afraid of being nothing. But now I know, I was never nothing. I was just in the wrong hands." Back in Jonathan's world, cracks widened. His company's stock dipped subtly at first, then with sharper teeth. Investors began asking questions, not just about his performance, but about his judgment. His name had once meant aggressive growth. Now it hinted at personal scandal and instability. Worse, Cassandra's interview had confirmed everything the public suspected. He treated people like objects. He wanted to own power, not earn it. "I stayed too long. I'm not proud of that." She ended with a cryptic quote. "The woman he left behind is the woman who surpassed him. I admire her more than I ever admired him." The internet erupted. So did Jonathan. He trashed his office that night. Smashed a crystal decanter, shouted at 2 assistants, fired one of his interns for breathing too loudly. But no tantrum could reverse the public tide. He was no longer the story. Scarlett was. At a private networking dinner hosted by an influential VC firm, Scarlett's name was on the guest list. Not as a guest plus one, but as a speaker. Jonathan's wasn't on the list at all. In the quiet of his penthouse, the same walls that once made him feel like a king now felt like prison bars. The silence pressed in harder than ever. He watched a video clip of Scarlett's speech from the gala on his phone. The glow in her eyes. The effortless grace. The way people listened. He whispered the words out loud, almost to himself. "You're not a wife anymore. You're a liability. Trash in a pretty box." They echoed like a curse. He dropped the phone. And in that moment, Jonathan Stone, billionaire, empire builder, image chaser, finally understood. He hadn't just lost Scarlett. He had never deserved her. The rain came heavy that night. Sheets of water drumming against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Jonathan's penthouse. The glass streaked with the blur of city lights twisted by storm. He sat in the dark, wrapped in the silence he used to enjoy. Once it had symbolized control, peace, solitude. Now it felt like a vacuum, every corner of the space haunted by absence. Scarlett's laughter. The soft rustle of her feet on the hardwood. The way she used to hum to herself when arranging fresh flowers, even after sleepless nights. All gone. The untouched scotch in his hand trembled slightly as he scrolled through his phone. Another article. Another photo. Scarlett, radiant, standing beside a row of women outside the newly opened Scarlet Haven Center. The caption read, "From abandoned to unstoppable. Scarlett Stone launches NYC's first women's reinvention center for survivors of financial and emotional abandonment." There she was, smiling, not just posing. Really smiling. Not for him. Not for anyone else. For herself. He scrolled deeper. Pictures from the gala. Headlines. Public praise. Investor interviews. One of his former board members, now serving on Scarlett's advisory council. Another email from his PR firm marked urgent. More sponsors pulling out. Stockholders asking to reevaluate leadership. He didn't even open it. He just leaned back in the leather chair he once declared was throne-worthy, the irony now suffocating, and stared at his reflection in the black glass. What stared back was not a king. It was a man unraveling. For years, he believed fear kept people loyal. Money kept them tethered. Image kept them protected. But Scarlett had destroyed that illusion. She had walked away with nothing and made everything from it. And he, He had walked away with everything and ended up with nothing. Even Cassandra, who once clung to him like a lifeline, was gone. Not even a note. Just an empty closet and a leaked story that painted him as an insecure fraud hiding behind his fortune. He had built his empire like a fortress. Now every wall echoed. The next morning, he received a single, unassuming envelope in the mail. Inside was an embossed invitation. It read, Scarlet Haven Gala, Inaugural Celebration, honoring women who rebuild from ruins. The handwriting at the bottom was hers. Not angry, not sarcastic. Simply, you always said I was good at throwing parties. Thought I'd invite you to one of mine. He laughed, bitter, breathless. He didn't know what stung more, that she had sent it, or that she had no intention of letting him matter ever again. Later that night, alone again, he opened an old photo album from their early days. A smiling Scarlet in a yellow sundress. The day they signed the lease on their first apartment. Her surprise birthday cake. A picture he took of her sleeping, hand on her belly, peaceful. He closed the album, eyes wet. Not because she left, because he made it easy for her to go. And because now he realized too late, she had never been his weakness. She had always been his strength. The gala hall pulsed with quiet elegance. Cream-colored drapery swept from gold-trimmed ceilings. Chandeliers flickered like stars, and the room was filled not with titans of industry, but with women. Strong, radiant, battle-worn, and rising. Each one had survived something: abandonment, betrayal, silence, shame. And now they stood together, their presence a silent rebellion against every voice that had told them they were not enough. At the center of it all stood Scarlet. No longer hidden. No longer carrying pain like a second skin. She was dressed in deep crimson satin, fitting for a woman who had once been shamed for her name and now wore it like a crown. Her child, now several months old, slept peacefully in the arms of a close friend nearby. Her team buzzed with pride around the periphery, greeting guests, donors, survivors, and allies. Among them were city officials, healthcare leaders, therapists, and builders, people who had seen what Scarlet created and believed in it. Ethan stood at the bar, watching her with quiet admiration, sipping sparkling water instead of wine. He had never tried to claim her. He had simply walked beside her. And now he watched the woman she had become, untouchable, unshakable, undeniable. When Scarlet took the stage, the room fell into reverent silence. No music, no flash, just her, standing at the center with the soft click of her heels and the full attention of every soul in the room. She looked around, then down briefly at the notes in her hand, then folded them and placed them aside. She didn't need them. Her voice was clear, strong, steady. When I was left alone, I thought I'd never recover. I thought being discarded made me worthless. But worth isn't determined by who walks away. It's revealed by how we rise once they do. I was told I was trash. I was told I was a burden, that I'd never survive without the man who abandoned me. But I did. A few heads nodded. A few wiped tears. Scarlet Haven isn't just a building. It's a declaration that women do not have to be defined by their worst day or by the ones who walked away on theirs. We are not what was done to us. We are what we build from it. Applause erupted, but she lifted a hand gently. There was more. I don't stand here as a victim of a broken marriage. I stand here as the architect of a new future. Not just for me, for all of us. For every woman who has been told she's too loud, too soft, too much, too tired, too broken. You're not broken. You are becoming. This time, the applause couldn't be held back. The crowd rose to their feet. Not in pity. Not in polite encouragement. In awe. Ethan clapped with the rest of them, but he knew what no one else did. Scarlet's rise wasn't just a win for her. It was a crack in the system that had silenced women for centuries. Jonathan never attended, but he saw the speech. He watched it alone at his kitchen counter, in a penthouse that now felt like a tomb. The camera caught Scarlet mid-smile, holding her child after the event, surrounded by women who looked at her like a hero. He didn't cry. He didn't throw his glass. He just sat there, quiet. Because regret doesn't always come in fire. Sometimes it settles in like cold ash. Heavy, permanent. And Scarlett? She didn't think of him anymore. Months later, Scarlett walked through the sunlit hallways of Scarlet Haven, greeting staff and new residents. The center was growing, plans underway to open locations in 3 more cities. A book in the works, a podcast, a scholarship fund, but most importantly, a legacy. Her child cooed softly in her arms as she walked past a mural painted by a resident artist. A phoenix rising from ash. Beneath it, a quote etched into the wall. She remembered who she was, and the game changed. Scarlett smiled. She didn't just remember who she was. She became everything she was always meant to be. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.